This is Just Tool Basics, and today we're talking about screw and nut starters. Hello everyone, welcome to Just Tool Basics. Today's topic is screw and nut starters. And what these are little tools that help you grab on to the end of a screw that is either small and fiddly or going in a hard to access place where you really don't want to drop the screw. And the way that works is the little expanding head here locks into the head of a screw in the case of the screwdriver mode, or into the open end of a nut in the case of the nut driver. And to show you how this works, I'm going to switch out for a macro lens so you can really see what we're talking about here. So, as you can see, this is a Phillips screw starter, or according to the manufacturer of this, Klein, it is a screw holding screwdriver, which is awkward to say and not even exactly accurate. The way this thing works, like I said, is you can take a screw, you slide up this collar, put that in place in the screw, slide the collar back, and now you have a convenient spinny holder place. And it is really locked in there, like, well, you can't see because we're zoomed in, but it is locked in there tightly. You can see it has serrations there to help grip the head of the screw a little bit better. And this design is really designed for Phillips head. Like, it doesn't work with much else other than maybe, a combo headed screw, which is, you're using the Phillips part, but, it works fine in there. However, if you're dealing with Robertson or square drive screws, like this one, for example, this isn't the best choice. It'll hang on a little bit, but it's not tight. That's where you want to use this design, which, as you can see, is stepped. And this is a screw and nut starter, because that step design both allows it to grab in the head of square drive screws, Phillips head screws, as well as grabbing onto these small nuts. And it grabs pretty tightly. And as you tighten this, and like I said, these aren't designed for driving them down to torqued, but as you drive it in, obviously the bolt or screw pushes this out of the way, and it's left somewhat threaded, which is exactly what you want. Now, this design doesn't work for very large nuts, but in the case of large nuts, you probably have other options besides tiny little handled things. Now, lastly, we have this design. The way this works, you can see that center blade rotates when you rotate the handle and kind of ducks out of the way to stay locked in that position. Then you insert that into the screw, and then when you push down with the screw, that center blade pushes up into the slot of the screw and locks it in place, which you can barely see in there. And then there's a rotational spring in here putting pressure on that center blade so that it's, again, held quite tightly. I'm not supporting this, and it holds really nicely. And then it's enough to get it started, and then you can easily, well, maybe not easily, but pull it away from what you're tightening it into, and it'll let go. Again, none of these are for really tightening down on the screw. They're only for getting it started. That's why they're called a screw starter or a nut starter. Now, these are all made of aluminum. The handle or body is made of aluminum. There's knurling so that you can get some grip so you can twist it. This one's collar doesn't have a spinny collar. It does have a slight bit of knurling to set it in that mode for locking into the screw. But these other two designs have knurling on the collar or sleeve that allow you to hold it in place while you rotate the body. The tips are all made of some sort of steel alloy, some sort of spring steel. This one has a little pocket clip. This one comes with a magnet on the end, which is nice to throw in there. But these things really shine when you don't have the option of just using a magnetic screwdriver. With a slotted screw, you almost never have that option to trust being able to reach into a hard to access area and assume the screw is going to stay on. You need this mechanical device to bind in that screw slot. And with all of these, you're not dependent on the screws being magnetic. So it works great for brass screws, bronze screws, stainless steel screws, where a magnetic screwdriver just wouldn't work even poorly. It just wouldn't work at all. Now, I mentioned that these can work in a variety of types of heads of screws. Those Phillips head ones work in all of these. You know, the combination square drive or Robertson drive, regular Phillips head, smaller Phillips head is a Phillips 1 or Phillips 0, whereas this is a normal size Phillips number 2. It even works in these hex head screws. The stepped one does, that is, not the Phillips one. But as you can see, it, even though it's four-sided, it bites in there pretty nicely. And it also works in a star bit. Works just fine. Now, there are other designs that I don't have here. There are nut starters that are like a little three-prong thing that bites onto the three of the faces. There's a couple reasons I don't prefer that kind. One is it generally only works for very, very small nuts. And two, you're just adding bulk. The center reach works just fine. If you're talking about really, really small nuts, like number 0 nuts, then this won't fit in there. This is kind of number 4 up to maybe a 1/4 inch, something like that. The external grabbing kind are kind of all you're left with. And lastly, as I mentioned, these are not for torquing down your fasteners. They're designed to get them started, and then once it's securely in place, reach in with another more appropriate tool to tighten them all the way. These will get damaged if you put a bunch of pressure on them. Again, just for getting started, not for tightening all the way. Unless all the way is very, very loose. So, these are screw and nut starters. Until next time, this is Just Tool Basics.